Hi everyone, welcome to CHIRLA TV. We have some special guests today. My name is Pedro Trujillo, co-host of CHIRLA TV, joined here with
Edgar Aguilar, right here at CHIRLA TV. And our wonderful guest today is none other than the very Bob Hertzberg from District 18. Welcome.
Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Absolutely. Thank you for including me. I appreciate it a lot.
Great. And we also have a special guest as well, Polo Morales, Apolonio Morales. What's your current title?
I am the External Affairs Director for CHIRLA.
Thank you for joining us. Today we'll be discussing a topic that's of great importance to the immigrant community, which is this around bail bonds, right? And protecting immigrants from these bail bond companies. And so what's going on right now, Senator?
Well, we have passed the most, it's been 3 years of hard work, but the most aggressive bail bond reform measure in the country. And basically what that means is, you know, if someone were to get arrested, you go to court and they say, well, here's what the chart says is how much it costs to get out. And today it's $50,000, the average bond. So you go to a bail bonds company and you pay $5,000 non-refundable money. Think about that. Non-refundable money that you get out, you show up in court and you never get it back. So what we did is we changed the law that says bail schedule's gone. There's no price for your liberty. Are you a flight risk or a public safety risk? They look at you and make that determination, and there's no cost. And also, listen to this, in some states, even though they've lowered the price of bonds, there's still administrative fees. Well, if you don't have the money, what's the difference? And so we have zero costs to folks. So the determination is you should never be in jail based upon your ability to pay. You know, because you got this situation where rich people who can get out, they have an ability. They get the size of their wallet. People that don't have the ability, and literally 63% of the people in downtown Los Angeles are there as what's called pretrial detainees, meaning they don't have the money to get out and they're no risk to society. Now, here's the catch. We have got past that. First time since 1981 there's been any real reform in bail, because these people are tough. I mean, they're tough. And so now they've gone out and spent a bunch of money and they put a referendum, which is on the ballot, to try to hold up the implementation of that law. It will be on the ballot in November 2020. So we've got to win that. But in the meantime, they're continuing to make money and overcharging people, and it's horrible.
And so, Polo, if you can just chime in a little bit here. We just heard from the senator that folks that suffer the most are the most vulnerable, or low-income communities, working-class communities, and when they go into bonds, they get this deep financial burden that falls on the family. How does this compare with immigrant families?
Yeah, so if you can imagine at a point where you have a family member that's picked up by ICE, they've knocked on your door, they're scared the heck out of your family, and then you're taken in, and in order to fight your deportation, it's best to get you out. So to try to bond people out in a time where they're most scared and fearful for their loved ones, and then to have somebody throw a contract in front of their face and say, if you sign this, we're going to get your loved one out. But there's these financial repercussions that have a huge impact. So, when you're in that moment, and we've seen this time and time again, folks will sign, they get themselves into financial dire straits down the line. So this is something that's very, very complex that folks don't fully grasp at the moment that they're feeling their emotion. And I think it's really important to underscore that there are very little or few consumer protections for immigrants in our state. And this is why the necessity has come about, and why we're counting on Senator Hertzberg and we're backing this this bill, is to make sure that we can get it across the finish line and really help our immigrant communities across the state.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we've noticed throughout the last couple of years is that the state government has been moving aggressively to find consumer protections for immigrant families, to create equity for immigrant families. And so this is continuing that legacy for immigrant equity in California.
That's right. Think about this. Think about this. For the last 50 years in California, before all you guys have been born, for 50 years, we have been writing new and new laws appropriately to protect consumers. Give you an example. We have this California debt collection practices, meaning that people can't go and knock down your door if you owe money on a credit card. If you buy a car, you get certain rights, and you get a contract in Spanish or whatever other language might be appropriate. And what happens is you get protections. You have the right to withdraw. You have various kinds of consumer protections. You have consumer protections that contracts have to be in your own language, right? So you can understand it. It's just common sense. listen to this. If it's an immigration bond, companies say, oh, we're not a consumer company, we're an insurance company. Guess what? It doesn't apply. So here are folks in the most vulnerable position, as you expressed, and basic principles as who we are as a people don't apply. I'm sorry, that day's over. We're going to pass this bill and provide those consumer protections to immigrants and everybody else.
That's exciting. And so we will have a segment right after these messages discussing what this bill is, the bill number, how you can support it, and what can you do to combat the opponents that are going to come after it. We know they are. And so stay tuned here at CHIRLA TV as we will continue this conversation.
Welcome back to CHIRLA TV, where we're talking about the bond bill. Let's talk about the bill, the immigration bond bill, and how it's going to support our communities.
It's Senate Bill 960 is the number of the bill, I'm told. and what it says in the basics, most simplest terms, is that the various consumer protection laws apply when you have an immigration bond. Listen to this. There was a federal court case where there was a company that had a workforce that were large, almost exclusively Spanish-speaking, and the contracts for the immigration bonds were only written in English. Under the law, under the consumer protection laws, they're required to provide that contract in your language, period. That's a basic right. Does not apply to the immigrant community with respect to these immigration bonds. It is just plain wrong. Debt collection, same kind of things. Under these bail bonds and immigration bonds, do you know that you have to go through a proper procedure? You can't harass people. None of those protections apply. All of which, so it's the simplest terms, is we're just saying if it's an immigration bond or a bail bond, basic consumer protection law that's been into place between 30 and 50 years applies. So everybody gets treated with fairness and equality. There's nothing wrong with that.
And that's why CHIRLA is supporting it as well. But I'm wondering where the inspiration behind this bill came from.
Well, I've been working, I was Speaker of the Assembly and left government many years ago and traveled the world, worked all over the planet on all sorts of things, and just saw around the world where the rule of law was so critical. My dad was a constitutional lawyer and did all kinds of great cases in the Supreme Court, and it's kind of been what I've been about. And when I came back to government after being gone so long, I'm fighting for the people that don't have any voice. I know how to fight for all the other stuff, but this is what I'm doing. So I started out after Ferguson. If you remember, in Ferguson, Missouri, these people were getting put in jail with tickets, and I changed all the ticketing laws and changed all these big tickets where literally there were $10 billion of unpaid tickets, and people would lose their license, and then they'd get pulled over from losing their license. Their car would get impounded. Exactly. They're stuck in jail. So I fixed those, gave us amnesty for those, changed the whole process, a series of 7 bills, and in that process started looking at bail. Wait a second. I had a case in Ventura County that some clerks came to me. Look at this long rap sheet. Look at all these things. Why are you letting these people out? I looked at the rap sheet. You know what the first thing was? Someone had a broken taillight. And then as a result, the broken taillight didn't show up in court. When they didn't show up in court, they lost their license. Then they're driving, taking their kid to school, and they get pulled over for driving without a license. Then they get arrested, put in jail. They can't afford to get out. Their car gets impounded. Their house, they get kicked out of their place. Their whole life is turned upside down. There has to be a rational relationship between the crime and the punishment. There has to be some human understanding of what it's about. One of the other bills I did in Northern California, these kids were trying to get to school. They didn't have the dollar for the bus, for the train. They jumped the deal. When they jumped the deal, it was a crime. They all of a sudden were one strike. They got a crime. I made it an administrative fee. Of course, you shouldn't jump the little turnstile or whatever the case may be, but you don't put a kid in jail for that stuff, right? We just didn't have it. So it was this whole last 5 years of my life involved in bail reform and all of these kinds of things, dealing with fundamental issues of justice. You can't have a rule of law when common sense does not apply.
That's right. And Polo, can you speak on CHIRLA's behalf as to why this bill is as important as it is this time around?
Well, it is under the current Trump administration, we've seen an increase in terms of the enforcement, or the approach to enforcement has gotten much more aggressive. And so because we are seeing folks that are impacted and we don't know at any given moment what the administration is going to do, we have to ensure that the folks that are, going through this, very critical moment in their life in terms of being able to help their loved one come out of a detention center, we have to make sure that these protections exist. Because if we don't, then we basically are allowing for folks to be taken advantage of. And when that happens, the multiplying effect of that impact has huge repercussions across our communities, our immigrant communities, and across the state. So in order to prevent that, we have to be able to have our voices heard. We have to make sure that folks understand the human impact and the human face. So when we go to the Capitol, we let folks know, hey, this is how it impacted my family, or this is how it can impact other folks. Let's do something about it. Let's change that. Let's make sure that we bring back some humanity into this.
And we've mentioned what it is to have bail bonds, the cost. I think you said around $50,000 the cost for bail bonds for the average for criminal court. But then we have in immigration court, I think it's around like $20,000 now. $28,000 that average for bail bonds. And so this is why it's such a critical bill, SB 960 in California, and hopefully it serves as also inspiration for other states' representatives to also move legislations that are similar. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Welcome back. We're here chatting about California's leadership with this bill that is going to be introduced. And now the next thing is, how is CHIRLA being part of all of this?
Yeah, so what we have at CHIRLA is we have a fund that helps to get the bond for folks out. So I can tell you that that amount of money that we have set aside is quickly diminished, because as soon as the check is cut and the amounts have gotten so expensive and so much more difficult to attain, it makes it really hard for us to help a large amount of people. And so we're counting on this bill to be able to facilitate and actually allow for folks to be able to get their loved one out in a fair manner, in a humane manner.
And for this bond at CHIRLA, this fund, who can apply for it, or how can they go about seeking this help from CHIRLA?
So it's on an as-needed basis, obviously, but the folks that come to our door that are requesting this type of bond are folks that come through our Rates Rapid Response Network. So in Los Angeles, we have a network of organizations that have their eyes and ears on the ground, and they're making sure folks know their rights, and they also, if they face, if somebody gets detained, that they respond to us, so we can go ahead and alert a network of attorneys that then can go to B18 or can deliver that check to be able to get that person out. And so that's how we're able to help people. And again, it's like a limited amount of funds that we have because it's so expensive.
And as the bill moves forward, I understand it's been introduced.
It's been introduced.
Where is it going next?
Well, it'll go to the Insurance Committee in the Assembly, and then it'll go, I'm in the Senate, so I'm the Majority Leader of the Senate. It starts in our House. It'll go to the Insurance Committee in the Senate, and then from there it'll go to the Appropriations Committee, then to the Senate floor, and then it passes from there, goes over to the Assembly, similar kind of thing to its floor, and then back to us, and then to the governor's desk. That will take between now, since the bill's introduced, up until August of this year.
Are you expecting opposition to be getting in the way here?
Well, we were able to, I've done the bail bill initially that's now referended on the ballot and was able to be successful. The Senate has been quite supportive. The Susan Rubio is the senator in the Senate, the chair of the Senate Committee on Insurance, and I know that committee's been quite supportive. The Appropriations Committee's been quite supportive, and we've been able to get bipartisan support on these kinds of measures on the floor in the Senate. I've run into some challenges in the Assembly, and I'm going to need every bit of help from CHIRLA and every one of our friends to make sure we win that and organize and come up and lobby every one of these members and tell them their stories and explain why this is so important. And we have to beat the insurance lobby, because these insurance lobbies are pretty powerful. And we can beat them, but we got to stay focused and we got to work hard.
It's just wonderful to count with your support at the with the other legislators, but in the ground level, with people to people, how can the regular folk help us? Or you mentioned organizing. How can we assist and make sure that this gets to the front?
Well, I think what you got to do is, look, the good news is I know what I'm doing. I've been around a long time, and I know how to get this stuff done. But the support I need is if I would go and get and organize around the Senate. You guys look it up on the internet. The Senate members and the Assembly members of the Insurance Committee. I would ask people to go to their district offices, to the communities they represent, and go talk to them. Tell them the stories. Tell them what impact this means to people. Give them the human face of kinds of stories where people who've been taken advantage of and haven't gotten basic protections. Tell the story to their staffs. Go meet with the legislators. Get out there, and it's a lot of work. It takes a long time. There's a lot of members of these various committees, but get out there early. Help us with as many. Lots of people feel powerless, but you have power. You have power in numbers. If we got 1,000 letters in Sacramento or emails or whatever in the old days it was letters, now it's emails, whatever it is. So I can come into the Senate and put a big stack of those things on the table and said, not everybody could afford to travel to Sacramento today, but here's 3,200 people from all corners of the state of California that want justice.
This is wonderful, and I know a lot of people might feel a little bit scared or frightened to do all of this.
I'll take care of it. Don't be scared. Get it to me, and I'll take care of it.
But that's
what I'm talking about.
we have organizations like CHIRLA.
Well, you guys are warriors.
And with their organizers, they can have leadership workshops and know how to go about this and really bring out the leader in them.
But we'll get to that in just a second, right after this commercial break.
So we're back here at CHIRLA TV, and before we left, we were talking about how people can get involved and reach out to CHIRLA to get these leadership workshops through the organizing team at CHIRLA.
So we have our membership bases all across the state, and what we do is we make sure that folks understand what the bill does, in this case SB 960, to make sure that they understand this is a benefit to the community. We need your help. We need you to identify stories in your community to bring back so we can talk to our representatives both in the Assembly and the Senate to be able to provide those face-to-face testimonies in the hearings and throughout the whole process to make sure that they understand why this is a priority, why this is a necessity, and why we need to get it across the finish line.
And we do have a huge following, a huge support in your district. We have a lot of members led by our organizer, Maru Galvan. She is amazing, and I'm sure come to their membership meetings and learn more about this.
Anything you would like to say, Senator, to your constituents about this bill?
First of all, I want to say thanks for doing this, because honestly, I've been fighting this fight for a long time, and the fact that you guys would come on and be part of this and sponsor this bill meant a lot to me, because I got Army, I got troops and organizers and people that know what they're doing, so it's a big deal. These are hard fights. I've done dozens of them, and it's all about the partnership and the coalition. But I represent 1 million people in the San Fernando Valley. Most of my community is Latino, Spanish-speaking. You have all the Northeast and the like, and I've spent my life working in the Latino community. And, the message is, no matter, we were talking earlier about, not in this program, but before we got on the program, about Congressman Roy Ball and E.T. Esteban Torres and all the great warriors. And those fights aren't over. They're just different. They're not kinds of fights that you see on the front page of the paper. They're insidious fights like this, where the law is written in a way and people are just hurting people. What's the difference if you're sitting in jail because you're beat up in the civil rights movement or whatever the case may be, or that basic rights aren't applied to you today? The fight and the importance of this justice and the diligence of it is just as important. And so that's why I'm in the fight. That's why I'm so happy to join you guys in this fight. And we're going to win. We're just going to do whatever we got to do. And sometimes you just got to rip off a few faces in the process, but that's the way it is, because we're doing it for the right reasons. I'm totally committed, and I'm excited about it. But this is the basic 101 issue, which is, if people really understood that all of a sudden, I can buy a car and I get protection. I can get a credit card, I can get a protection. But if I get in a detention center where I have the absolute right for a bail bond and my family and everybody signs on this, well, oops, those rights don't apply. It's shocking. No one knows it in a day like today in 2020 that this could be the case. That's why we've got to keep the fight. That's why you've got to help us organize. You've got to work with CHIRLA and other organizers around the state. You don't have to come to Sacramento. There'll be enough presence there. But help us in getting the message so that we can literally, when I stand there in the insurance committee in the California Assembly, I want a pile as tall as me of emails of people that said we've been affected by this stuff, so we can send the message to lawmakers that they've got to fix the law.
The challenge is out there for those emails to come your way, so don't
Send
be
them to
surprised
CHIRLA.
to see them. Polo, is CHIRLA going to be in Sacramento?
Yes, we will be in Sacramento as we are every year. We're going to bring 100 of our members to make sure that we prioritize all the bills that we want to pass this year. This one is a huge priority, knowing that what we're facing this year under this administration. I mean, we're the final stretch, hopefully, but we have to make sure these protections exist, that folks are protected in a way that they have a fighting chance, so their loved one doesn't have to go to another country and totally flip the finances of that family in one instant.
So we're talking about organizing people. We're going to be in Sacramento, but at the same time, there's people that might not be able to, for whatever reason, go all the way over there. CHIRLA has the Bund Fund. How can people support that fund?
Donation. So if you can donate, whatever we can to do to help those individuals that come to our door, we are committed to that. And it's it's not easy because this money has to be replenished in some way, shape, or form. But it is something that we are committed to, making sure that wherever we can help, we will. And we also have to make sure that we strengthen our rate rapid response network so folks understand their rights and be able to protect themselves and not fall into that trap of getting detained and going through this whole process, which is very harrowing.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Polo.
Thank you.
Edgar, thank you as always. It's been a pleasure. See you next time.